Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'll be reviewing for you
Hyrule Warriors, Age of Imprisonment for Switch 2. I am sorry. I must return.
I'm sure it's not exactly a secret that Tears of the Kingdom is currently my favorite video game. So of course, when Nintendo announced that there would be a canonical prequel to the events of that game, I was beyond stoked. Even though Tears of the Kingdom is my favorite video game, the one thing I did not like about it, and even pointed out in my review, was the story. I didn't like the story too much in Breath of the Wild, and I felt like this one, while it was a marginal improvement, still fell into a lot of the same traps. So I was hoping that Age of Imprisonment would redeem the lackluster story and maybe give a little bit more context as well as actually let you play it out. Because goodness knows the last time Zelda tried to star in a game, I was not too thrilled. Now before I get into Age of Imprisonment itself, we first have to bring up Age of Calamity, because a lot of people were not too thrilled with the execution of that game. They thought it was a great idea, a canonical prequel to Breath of the Wild. The only problem is that it wasn't canonical. It was only semi-canonical, and I won't explain how that works, but let's just say fans were not happy with how that turned out. So, before I get into describing the game itself, let me answer the question. Is Age of Imprisonment canon? Yes. Yes, it very much is. There's no alternate timeline nonsense. If you were told a character dies in Tears of the Kingdom, that character dies in this game. Although, just in case you haven't played Tears of the Kingdom and you want to jump straight into this, I will not spoil those details. I will say though, if you want to play this first, I don't think you'll be missing out on anything if you haven't played Tears of the Kingdom, although that can help you appreciate all of the fan service. Anyway, now that we've gotten the controversy out of the way, let's talk about the game itself. So if you've never played a Warriors game, which this is a crossover between Tears of the Kingdom and Dynasty Warriors, basically you control a handful of characters with really over-the-top maneuvers, oftentimes referencing little actions that you can do in the games of origin, and then expanding on it so that it seems like they're jumping and leaping all over the place with super flashy combos. And then you have a bunch of enemies on screen at once, sometimes as many as like 30, and usually these smaller enemies go down in only a couple of hits, but the challenge comes in that there's so many of them, and they'll often try to take over the various camps that you have set up. But then there will be these bigger enemies that take more hits, and you'll have to figure out how to adequately dodge their attacks and maximize how much damage you do. For the most part, it's familiar territory if you've ever played a Warriors game, but in my opinion, it does just enough to make it considerably more manageable than other Nintendo Warriors games that I've played. One of the things that I hated about the original Hyrule Warriors was that you were constantly playing Doctor. And what I mean by that was you would get these characters saying, "Oh no, our allied base is in danger, hurry up and save the place." And so you'd have to abandon what you're doing and then run back over to the allies and help them fight the battle. And then you'd have to hope that you still had enough time to complete the mission's main objective. They fixed that in Hyrule Warriors Legends by allowing you to give commands to the other characters as well as letting you switch characters, and added a new item that let you warp to various points on the map, which helped, but it could still be a bit difficult at times. So Age of Calamity came along and gave you different difficulty options, which made things a lot more manageable, and Age of Imprisonment continues that tradition. I never, at any point in the game, had to worry about babying. I was able to just jump straight to the main objective, and I didn't have to worry about people constantly telling me to backtrack, which was a huge relief. Maybe it was just the difficulty I was playing on, but I'm a sucker for games that give you multiple ways to play just in case you're not good. And if you want a challenge, they give you that option too. So what sets Age of Imprisonment apart is that, just like in Age of Calamity, it takes concepts and mechanics in Tears of the Kingdom and tries to adapt it to that gameplay style. So whereas Age of Calamity was more about trying to use Breath of the Wild systems, This game sort of does that with Tears of the Kingdom, and just to name a few examples, in Age of Calamity, if an enemy was about to do a powerful attack, there would be an icon above the enemy's head that would indicate which Sheikah Slate rune you'd have to use to counter it. Well, the Sheikah Slate runes actually don't appear in Tears of the Kingdom at all. So what is Age of Imprisonment's solution? You have forward attacks and upward attacks. And depending on whether the enemy is in the air or on the ground, you'll have a different counter to attack back. Now, an alternative to this, just in case you have trouble thinking on the spot, time does slow down when you're doing this, but just in case that's still not enough for you, sometimes the game will also prompt you to switch to a nearby character, and that character will automatically perform the adequate counterattack. Another cool mechanic that I really love about Age of Imprisonment, which I kind of feel like might have been inspired by the rival interactions in Sonic Racing Crossworlds, is that there are sync attacks. And what that means is that if your sync meter's filled up, and if there's another character nearby who also has a full sync meter, you can do a high five, and then the characters will work together to perform a super powerful finishing attacks. Now, there are already finishing attacks in the Warriors games to begin with, but now you have an additional one that is different depending on which character you pair up with. And to make it even cooler, the finisher is different depending on which character initiates it. So for example, if Zelda initiates a sync attack with Raru, Raru will get a different attack if he syncs up with Zelda. And as far as I know, there are just as many combinations as every single pair of characters in the game. And I love it. Every single one of them is an absolute showstopper. And even the worst moves, like a character might imbue a character with a shield that's elemental, even those provide good gameplay boons, as well as allowing you to do a finisher whenever you want. And a lot of them have unique control schemes, such as one where Zelda and Raru can move their light powers in different directions depending on which stick you tilt. And it's amazing that the game allows you to switch into different gameplay genres. Speaking of which, that's another great thing that Age of Imprisonment does, is it's not just hack and slash gameplay. There's a new character, which I will simply call the Construct to avoid spoilers. And this Construct has a special ability that transforms the game into a completely new style of gameplay. Fans of Nier Automata will probably be really happy about this, and people that don't like the constant over-the-top fighting will probably find that these are nice relief sections. I did not even know that these existed, because the only footage I saw of Age of Imprisonment before I played it were the reveal trailer. I didn't watch any of the promotional material that Nintendo put out, and as a result, I was completely surprised by these scenes. And I hope that you guys can too, which is why I will try my darndest not to have footage of any of this, so that you can experience it for yourself and have the amazement of the moment as I did. Now, Age of Imprisonment is a very, very cutscene heavy game. So much so that a lot of times my Switch 2 would go dim because there was so much time where I wasn't hitting anything. And that's a good thing. I love it when games incorporate more story, and considering that Tears of the Kingdom had such a lackluster story to begin with, I really appreciated how much more context everything was given. A lot of scenes where I felt like that came out of nowhere in Tears of the Kingdom all of a sudden made quite a bit more sense. You got to spend a lot more time with these characters that you only heard about. Now you actually get to play as them and have more conversations with them, and you get to really see like, oh wow, I get to be these characters at the absolute height of their power, which was one thing that a lot of people did praise about Age of Calamity was, oh hey, we get to play as the champions, and that's cool. And you do get to play as the sages in this game, as well as see a bit of their backstory, see what they look like without the masks. What even were the masks? You get answers to a lot of things that were left open for interpretation. And in addition to that, you also get lore reveals for the Zelda games as a whole, which is really cool. One thing I wasn't too thrilled about at first was that there's quite a lot of characters that join your party, and almost all of them are completely new to this game, and they don't get a whole lot of development, but the sync system makes it so that they're all still very valuable. Even if you have an underleveled party member, the Sync Strike is still just as powerful even if you use it with, say, if you're level 50 and someone else is level 40, it helps make that person viable. And it leads for some really cool scenes later in the game where you feel like every single person is contributing to the overall battle, and it led to some mind-blowing moments. Speaking of which, since this is the first Nintendo Warriors game on the Switch 2, you might be wondering if this is a good showcase of the Switch 2's power. Oh, heck yeah! A lot of people complained that Age of Calamity only ran at 30 frames per second, and even then it was a choppy 30 frames. This game runs leagues better than that one. It runs at 60 frames flawlessly. In fact, I would dare to say that this might be the best performing Switch 2 game I have played to date, possibly even outdoing Mario Kart World. Even other Switch 2 games that I've played that are at a consistent 60, like the Switch 2 editions of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, still had tiny little performance hiccups, like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom still had some poppin', for instance. And this game has nothing of the sort. It ran flawlessly, there were so many enemies on the screen, and none of them looked out of place, none of them just appeared when you got closer. They all were animated individually, so it felt like Nintendo didn't make this. It felt like the developers at Koei Tecmo really knew how to make the most of the Mario 125 tech demo and allow for all of these enemies to move independently and not feel out of place whatsoever. The graphics, the sound, and the UI are all masterfully designed, and they feel like they're taken straight out of Tears of the Kingdom, which is very impressive considering that this wasn't even made by the original developers. It's so amazing how Koei Tecmo and Omega Force are able to take these franchises, convert them into a Warriors style, and yet they feel just like the games that they were inspired by, which is also what I loved about Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes and Persona 5 Strikers. Another cool thing is that all of the original cast from Age of Calamity and Tears of the Kingdom that were relevant to the plot reprised their roles except for two. Sean Chiplock and Amelia Gotham were replaced, but it's a testament to how much better the voice direction has gotten in Zelda games that both of the replacements are so good that I would say that they were better than the original actors, which is saying a lot because Sean Chiplock is a legendary voice actor. I really respect him, especially after he played Santa in the 999 remaster. And that goes to show how talented of an actor Joe Zija is, because he nails it. It's almost as if the role of the Sage of Wind was made for him. I think this is overall the Zelda game that probably has the best voice direction out of all of them, as all of the performances are really, really good. Patricia Somerset seems like she got over the cold or maybe the getting back into character problem that she had with the Zelda notes in Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild Switch 2 editions, and she sounds wonderful. And all of the returning actors sound like no time has passed at all. They got Matt Mercer to reprise his role as Ganondorf, and he still kills it with every single line. I wish Ganondorf was given more screen time, but the screen time that he does have is used masterfully. And the game does a great job of making Ganondorf seem even more imposing and even more of a threat than it did in Tears of the Kingdom, which again is saying a lot because I really liked Ganondorf's portrayal in that game, but this game makes Tears of the Kingdom look like a joke in comparison. The action is always so much fun. The battle sequences are amazing, even if the environments don't feel quite as fun to explore as they did in Tears of the Kingdom. It still feels well designed enough. My only big gripe with the environment design is that it doesn't seem like the landscape changes based on your actions. Like, for example, in Tears of the Kingdom, you'd leave footprints when you walked through the sand, or you'd see ripples in the water when you walked through it. But if you're walking through shallow water, you'll walk on top of it and won't leave any ripples, which seems like a strange oversight. And you won't leave footprints in snow or sand. And another bit of a missed opportunity I found is that there are a handful of scenes where you can walk around as Zelda in full 3D and move the camera around to look at all of ancient Hyrule's scenery. The problem is that these are more or less walking simulator sections, so you don't actually get to explore Hyrule as much as Link did. And there's, as far as I'm aware, there's really only like 2 of these scenes, which is really unfortunate, because I would have loved it if there were more opportunities where you could just seamlessly transition between exploring and battle, like some of the early battles did. But still, the fact that they implemented it all gives me hope that maybe there could be a Zelda game one of these days that's not a spin-off, that allows Zelda to actually move around and explore in a game that is not like Echoes of Wisdom. I also think the music is absolutely phenomenal in this game. Most of the tracks were performed by real instruments and even a full orchestra in some cases, and a lot of the people that worked on the music were responsible for Nier Automata's soundtrack, which is one of the only things I liked about that game, and they nailed it here. Whenever synth was used, it felt like it was used appropriately, and whenever the orchestra was used, it was usually done to great effect. Some of the remixes of familiar Tears of the Kingdom tunes weren't quite as good as in the original game, but they were pretty darn close. But most of the original tunes absolutely nailed it. And I love the fact that there's an in-game soundtrack player. I love that you can turn off the sound effects and voices so that you can only hear the music, which is going to be great once I start capturing footage for this review. I love the cutscenes. I love how they intermingle the new cinematics with the existing ones from Tears of the Kingdom to either add more context or add to the emotional oomph of it. And again, it's a testament to the animators working on this game that if you didn't know which cutscenes were from Tears of the Kingdom, you probably would not be able to tell the difference. And that's just a general theme about this game as a whole. Besides the handful of moments like the lighting feels a bit more flat and you don't actually like leave footprints or ripples when you go through water or sand, this game feels like it was taken straight from the source material, and that is amazing. I never thought I'd say this, but Age of Imprisonment has actually made me like a story that I originally hated, which I never ever thought I would say. While it is true that there are quite a lot of systems that you can ignore and a lot of side quests that you can just plow through if you just want to get straight through the story, the main story missions were so much fun that I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. Overall, I had a blast nearly every second of Age of Imprisonment. But I could see that if you don't like Warriors games, I don't think this will change your mind unless you really like Tears of the Kingdom's story, or if you're like me and you didn't like it and you want to see more of it. But I imagine there will probably be a cutscene compilation on YouTube that you can just watch. Now this game goes for $70. And if I had to guess why Nintendo upped the price, besides just it's the Switch 2, so why not, it's because this game runs flawlessly and there are so many enemies on the screen, and the production values for the music and the graphics are absolutely phenomenal. But at the same time, it's a relatively short game if you don't engage in all the side activities. I say relatively because it took me about, I think, 9 or 10 hours to beat the game. It felt like so much longer because these battles were so cinematic. Personally, I rented this game from Gamefly, and I know you're probably tired of hearing that, but I don't really see the need to replay this anytime soon. It was fun enough to play the battles once, but I don't really feel the need to do all the side quests and engage in this game's systems. So to me personally, playing through it once and turning it back in, I feel like that was the right call. Now, considering that this wasn't published by Nintendo or developed by them, you probably will get way more sales than you would with first-party Nintendo games. So I would say probably wait for it to go on sale, because I do think $70, it's the kind of price that I wouldn't justify for any game unless if it like triples the amount of content in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. But whatever price you pay, you are in for a really well-made Warriors game, assuming you're okay with the repetitive style and the over-the-top action that these games all have. If you don't like Warriors games, you're probably not going to like this, but if you do, you're in for what I consider the best Nintendo Warriors game to date, and a great refinement of Tears of the Kingdom story, and a great way to introduce more lore to the Zelda series in a spin-off of all things. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Before I end this video, I do want to quickly say that this is the last introductory skit that Esabelle is going to be doing for my channel, because she is moving on to more behind the scenes work. So I hope that if you liked her dressing up at the beginning of these videos, that since she can read my comments, I hope you will give her some good words if you really liked all of the skits that she did at the beginning of these. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!